Thank you so much for tuning in this week to our weekly Indie Author Method conversation. This week, I'm joined by author Russell Camp, whose new book, The Angel of Thunder Rock, has just come out. Russell, how are you?
I'm great, Andrew. How you doing?
I'm good. Thank you so much
Yeah.
for taking the time to join me to talk with
Yeah.
the aspiring authors uh, who come on to the podcast every week or to the YouTube video every week, who get our daily newsletter. This is really special. I'm so glad I get to talk with you just after The Angel of Thunder Rock has come out.
Yeah, man, I'm excited. Excited to talk to you as well.
So let's talk about the book. What inspired you to write The Angel of Thunder Rock, and how did you come up with the idea?
Um, the idea, I'm like 95% of the authors out there. I also have a day job. I have a couple of day jobs, as a matter of
Yeah.
fact. I'm a teacher and also mow yards on the side. And believe it or not, I thought of the idea while mowing yards. And I was mowing a yard and I listen to podcasts when I mow, and I can't remember what podcast I was listening to. I can't remember what was said, but the subject was talking about Route 66, the old Route 66, and I got to thinking, because I've spent some time over in New Mexico, of the little old towns that used to be on Route 66, that have all but dried up, in the last 100 years or so, since that highway was rerouted. And that premise kind of stuck with me. Well, what happens in those little towns? Who lives there? What kind of community would be present in one of those small towns? And so I started running with that idea. And along with that, I thought, well, what if an outside force was introduced into that town, and the fortunes of that small dried up town changed, and then it just kind of snowballed from there.
Yeah. I know this is your third book. Your first
Yep.
was a memoir. This is your second fiction novel.
Right.
How has your writing process changed, or the lessons you've learned as you've written, now two fiction novels?
Yeah, I think I've gotten better with each one. At least I like to think I have. I've been told that I have. Just as far as developing characters, I think this third one, the characters are much richer, um, and I'm starting to understand plot lines and arc of the story and resolution at the end. I'm starting to get all those things. So, but it's been a process, and that, like you said, that first book that I wrote was a memoir, and that was easy because those are just
Mhm.
stories of my knucklehead friends and me growing up in the '80s. So those are stories I've told, for 40 years, and I just finally wrote those down. But the second one, Across the Fence from Roy, was the the first opportunity I had to express a story, that just I made up, creatively. Um, and so, like I said, I think I've gotten better with this third one.
Yeah. What made you decide to start writing fiction after that memoir came out? I know that you'd spent some time with Across the Fence from Roy. What made you decide that you wanted to try your hand at
Yeah.
fiction as
So
opposed to
right. So
following
like I
up,
said, yeah. So like that first one, again, was just I really, honestly, I wrote it for my friends. I grew up with these five other guys that I'm still best friends with. We've been best friends our whole lives, and so I just wrote it for them and thought,
Okay.
well, I'll just go ahead and publish it. The funny thing was, other people started reading that book, and I started getting lots of positive feedback, and people say, "Hey, man, you're a pretty good storyteller." But the best compliment I was getting from that book was people would say, "Man, that reminds me of my childhood," and they would tell me stories about their childhood, and
Mhm.
I thought that was really really cool. Um, and so, with that second book, I just thought to myself, "Okay, I've written this book, and I actually enjoyed it." Uh, but I'd like to try fiction. I'd like to try something where um, perhaps I could create a whole new world of characters and a story.
Are there any authors that you find inspiration from, or that you try to emulate in any way, or take something that you glean information from them off of?
My reading is all over the place, man. I
Okay.
love Malcolm Gladwell. I love Stephen King. I've read a few Andrew J. Brandt books, which I thoroughly enjoy. Um, and so, yeah, my reading it's eclectic. It's all over the place, and it's really just the subject or the story is what I'm after. And if that's what intrigues me, the author is sometimes secondary as far as that
Gotcha.
goes.
Well, what is your writing process like? Like, what do you whenever Russell Camp sits down to write, what does that look like?
Right. Well, again, and it's as crazy as this sounds, I write these books while I'm mowing yards,
Yeah.
and I've gotten to where I carry a Manila folder in my truck, and I'll be, you know, mowing a yard, and I'm going along, and all of a sudden I'll have a thought, and I'll stop the mower, I'll walk over to my truck, and I'll get a pen and I'll write something on
Sure.
that Manila
Yeah.
folder, and then I'll go back. Um, and then by the a week, maybe 2 weeks, that folder will be full of information. It'll have some character descriptions and some attributes, maybe even some things that a character would say. And then I start thinking, okay, well, this could happen in this story. So I'll start kind of putting down plot lines, and I have a beginning in mind and I have an ending in mind, but I want to make sure it's almost like uh, being looking at a roadmap.
Yeah.
I'm plotting points in between and trying to say, okay, where would they be at this particular point of the story, and who would be there?
And I do want our viewers and the people who get the daily newsletter to notice that you don't just sit down and say, chapter one, here we go.
No.
Once you actually start writing, you've got a ton of notes and plans and a roadmap in place, so you know where your story's going.
Right. And usually, and I've done it with the last two books, Across the Fence from Roy and also The Angel of Thunder Rock. I'll actually post a picture on social media of all of my notes when the book is complete. And,
Yeah.
it's about that thick, just pages and notes and everything else.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, I want people to know, hey, writers don't just sit down and just
Yep.
just this stuff come out of they really work at their craft and work at what they're doing.
I was really fortunate. I got to read The Angel of Thunder Rock before, I think even before the publication version was ready,
Right.
and really loved it. What message or takeaway do you hope readers get from this book?
Well, I want to say before I answer that question that you gave me some fantastic advice and notes when you read that book, and I moved some things around, and it's made a world of difference in that book, and I want to thank you for that.
Oh, you're
uh,
very welcome. I mean, it's my
yeah,
pleasure. Yeah.
yeah, and as far as the answer to your question, uh, this book is about redemption. It's about the redemption of a town. It's about a redemption of the people that live in that town. And so I mean, who doesn't love a redemption story? That's why we all like Rocky, um, because, Rocky, he was just a bum that became champ.
Yep.
And so we all love those kind of stories. Um, and so, I want people to take away that idea that, yeah, this is about
Mhm.
redemption, and that even towns can be redeemed.
Yeah. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I loved it so much.
Thank you.
Russell, where can our viewers find you and find your new book?
Okay. So I'm on Facebook and Instagram at Russell Camp Author on both of those. Um, the book is available on Amazon and also at Burrowing Owl Books, which is a local bookstore in Amarillo, Texas.
Fantastic. Is there any piece of advice, let's say, because this happens to me a lot, somebody comes up to me and says, "Hey, and I love this book, but I've got story ideas myself. What's the one piece of advice you could give me as an aspiring author? What's that one piece of advice that Russell Camp would give?"
man, I would say just start writing and keep writing. And if you make a mistake, if you get to a point where you're not sure where to go with it, just leave that where it is and pick up at the next point and keep going. And you can go back and fill in the cracks and fill in the holes later. But just the idea that it's just that finding that creative part inside of you, which I think all people have, and just learning to express that creative part. I think it's good for the soul.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Russell, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew.
I wish you all the success in the world.
Thank you, brother.
We'll talk to you again soon.
Sounds good.